As the year 2021 has just ended, I thought it's about time that I share with you my top 5 photography books of the year. The books that I'm about to show you will include some very famous classics of photography books. They will include some rare finds, and they will include some lesser known artists that I personally love and very excited to share with you, so you can check them out for yourself. So coming in at number 5 as one of my favorite photographers of all time, and it's Joel Meyerowitz and his book Between the Dog and the Wolf. So Between the Dog and the Wolf is quite a rare book. It's only being printed in the 2nd edition now, and I had to order it and wait quite a while for it to be shipped. It's also not the most affordable book. I think it costs about £85, but it is a beautiful cloth-bound edition with an imprinted photograph on the cover, like an embossed photograph. Between the Dog and the Wolf is an expression from the English language that talks about the twilight. So it's this time in the day when the light is setting, and we have this beautiful light that comes between golden hour and blue hour, like a mix of bright, beautiful sunset colors. In this book you will mostly find photographs of pools and bodies of water, and usually pools by the sea. So these are some beautiful, colorful photos of mostly landscape photography and some urban and city photography, which I believe have been done on an 8x10-inch large format camera, which gives you the amazing depth of field and the amazing sharpness and details of the photographs. I also want to read you the introduction to one of the photographs by Joel Meyerowitz himself. It's called Pool by the Sea. In years to come, I found myself becoming attracted to the idea of water near water like this, a contained body of water next to the wildness of nature. Oddly, it was often at the twilight hour that I was drawn to these pools by the sea, the one a friendly place and the other wild, and I began to see them as a pairing between the known and the unknown. I have been working on this series on and off for 40 years. So it's very hard for me to pick favorites in this book, but one of my favorite photos is the one of 2 people just getting out of the pool. They're kind of mirroring each other in their body postures, and you can see a sort of resort, some palm trees, then you can see the ocean and the pool itself. And I love the coloring of this image. I love that it has some people in it. Maybe that's why it's one of my favorite images. In the second part of the book, you will find some more twilight images without bodies of water, just some landscape and urban photography that, again, he works so well with light, with artificial light, and with the natural light that's coming in from the sunset. Some of these images remind me a little bit of Todd Hido's photography that I showed you in my top photography picks of 2020. So go check that one out if you're interested to see what I mean by that. Okay, moving on to my number 4 pick, and this is a classic of photography books. One of the books that I believe everybody should own, or at least everybody should study and look at to kind of understand the history of photography, and one of the most famous photographers of all time, or at least one of the most famous American photographers of all time. And of course, I'm talking about Robert Frank and his book, The Americans. This is one of the most iconic books of American photography, and it's sort of a benchmark for documentary photography, and also a little bit like a mix of documentary and street photography. The images in this book are all black and white, and the book is divided into 4 chapters, each chapter beginning with an American flag or an image that includes an American flag. And what's special about this book is not only that it's all black and white and it's 35mm photography, but also that this book is kind of created to be read like a film. So there's a narrative leading you through the book, and you're supposed to look at each image fast and brief succession. You're not supposed to ponder on each image for a long time like you might with other books, like in Between the Dog and the Wolf, where you can spend half an hour just looking at one image. But here you're supposed to look at them in quick succession and being sucked into the story, being sucked into the narrative, so that as you flip through the book, one image kind of imprints on the next image, so you get like kind of a double, triple, quadruple exposure, and you start interconnecting the images and you start seeing some of the images in the other images. I think what is really inspiring and what you can learn from this book is how he captures people, how he finds these kind of Henri Cartier-Bresson like decisive moments. The book is kind of a critique of American culture. It's an observation of the good, the bad, and the ugly of the US. The book was not very well conceived when it was first published. It hasn't sold many copies back then, but a couple of years later, these photographs became really important and really successful and famous. And this book started selling a lot and is now one of the most iconic photography books ever. In this book, you can learn a lot about composition, a lot about storytelling with photography, a lot about how to capture certain emotions, not only in people, but also in still life, places, urban photography, landscape photography. And it teaches you a lot about how to work with 35mm and black and white. So yeah, in my opinion, a must-have in every photographer's arsenal, The Americans by Robert Frank. Okay, the next book you probably will not have heard of, and it's coming at place number 3 on my top 5 list. And it's a book by a Berlin-based young photographer that I know from photography school. He has just finished his degree and had his final exhibition where he showed this work, and he also produced this book for the exhibition. So it's kind of a catalog slash photo book slash, it has a little bit of a feel of a zine, and it's called Territorium by Milan Koch. This is number 84 out of 100 printed copies of this book, so it's a very rare book, and I'm not sure you can find it, but I will link the Instagram and contact information of Milan Koch down below the video. This book is very well made. It comes in a sleeve like this, and if you take out the sleeve, you can see the open binding of the book. And these are all 35mm black and white photographs as well. I'll flip through the book so you can get an impression. As you can see, you get a full page prints of the photograph, and they're a little bit rough and disturbing. A lot of in the moment captures of situations. It's about Berlin streets, so it's definitely considered street photography. A lot of images have been taken at night. He's using a lot of direct flash, and you don't know what's going on in a lot of the pictures. It's a mix of landscape, urban photography, street photography, just a lot of point and shoot kind of moments. Definitely rough, ugly things in here, animals, people who behave like animals, strange occurrences, strange faces. But overall, like a beautiful mix that kind of draws you in, takes you into the narrative of a dirty, rough city, which I can agree Berlin definitely is. It has this rough side and these rough edges. So I think he captured it really well, and it's unpleasant. So I like that. I like unpleasant things in photography that kind of challenge you a little bit. Okay, let's talk about my number 2 pick of photography books. And this is a book that I kind of stumbled on by accident, and it's Peter Hugo's Kin. So I found this in a museum shop when I was looking at some photography exhibition, and I checked out the shop to see if they had any cool discounted photography books, and this was one of the discounted books. Actually, my friend found it first, and I saw it and I was like, I have to have it as well, because the images in here are just really touching. And I will start by flipping through and reading you the introduction by Peter Kin himself. He's a South African photographer, and he's dealing with the South African society in this book, and also his personal kind of family life. So he writes, South Africa is such a structured, schizophrenic, wounded and problematic place. It is a very violent society. The scars of colonialism and apartheid still run deep. Issues of race and cultural custodianship permeate every aspect of society, and the legacy of forced racial segregation casts a long shadow. How does one live in this society? How does one take responsibility for history, and to what extent should one try? How do you raise a family in such a conflicted society? Before getting married and having children, these questions did not trouble me. Now they are more confusing. So I think this is a cool little introduction. As you see, the book contains a mixture of personal, family photography, landscape. I didn't know this photographer, Peter Hugo. If you do, well done, but if you don't, definitely check out his work. It's fantastic, and definitely check out the book Kin and maybe his other works. And now it's time to talk about my number one pick, and it's a little bit surprising, I would say, because it's not like the other books that I showed you that have been like well done, well printed, beautiful editions, cloth bound. This is a very small, simple book, but the more astonishing in its contents. And this is Photophile by Saul Leiter, published by Thames and Hudson. And basically it's like a little monograph of his different work. So it's not a classical photo book, but it contains his photography work, specifically from the 50s and 60s, I believe. Most of these photos are color photographs, but some of them are more black and white photographs, with the color photography being mostly street photography, kind of experimental images, and with the black and white photography being more nudes and kind of personal, more portrait-like and street photography images. I again will read you the introduction to the book, which I think sums it up really well. Saul Leiter thought neither fame nor commercial success, despite his immense talent for photography. Born in Pittsburgh, he spent the 1940s and 50s in New York in an intensely creative environment where ideas from Europe and America came together and intermingled. There he encountered Rothko and the abstract expressionists and discovered street photography and the work of Henri Cartier-Bresson. His mastery of color is displayed in unconventional cityscapes in which reflections, transparency, complex framing, and mirroring effect are married to a very personal printing style, creating a unique kind of urban beauty. And yeah, I think especially his color work was kind of groundbreaking for his time. And I would say it's still some of the most interesting street photography work. I have dabbled a little bit in street photography this year, but I tried kind of emulating his style because I really love how he works with color, how he works with reflections in kind of glass windows, and he kind of works with different layers in the foreground and background, and like multiple layers of text, of color coming together and creating these rich, interesting images that you can look at for a really long time. Definitely it's worthwhile purchasing this little book. It's very cheap. I think it's about a tenner. Saul Leiter, Thames and Hudson, Photophile. One of my favorite series for sure. I will check out more books in the series if I can, and hopefully introduce them to you. I hope you found something new, something inspirational, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.